guys, welcome back to my channel.
Speech off.
So I'm here to talk about some of my favorite historical fiction books about World War II. I know everybody's sick of World War II historical fictions, but I'm not. There's some of my favorite historical fictions, probably my favorites actually. It's been that way since I was in middle school, obsessed with Anne Frank when we did our unit on Anne Frank. So yeah, it has never gone away, and I get a lot of book suggestions from BookTube. My sources include Amanda from The Curly Reader, Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library, and Krista from Books and Jams. Lately, Gloria Z. Thompson as well. She doesn't read quite as much as Amanda and Krista do, but yeah. And so, yeah. But a lot of these books are books that I've never heard covered on BookTube before. There's a few that have been covered, but a lot have not. And so I wanted to bring them to the table. I had already done a video with my favorite World War II historical fictions, and then I kind of got rid of it because I realized that everybody had been talking about these books already. So yeah, it wasn't that interesting because you'd already heard about them. So I decided to go through my Goodreads and kind of see which ones I'd read over the past few years, and I came up with a list that I am pretty sure has not been covered very much. So I came up with 10, although I do have one bonus pick because I cannot help myself. It is Winter Garden by Kristin Hannah. That is my favorite of Kristin Hannah's books. I know, I have also read The Nightingale, and everybody likes The Nightingale more, but I like Winter Garden way more than The Nightingale. So, I'll read the description for it because I just can't do it justice. I cannot explain this book. Meredith and Nina Whitson are as different as sisters can be. One stayed at home to raise her children and manage the family apple orchard. The other followed a dream and traveled the world to become a famous photojournalist. But when their beloved father falls ill, Meredith and Nina find themselves together again, standing alongside their cold, disapproving mother, Anya, who even now offers no comfort to her daughters. As children, the only connection between them was the Russian fairy tale Anya sometimes told the girls at night. On his deathbed, their father extracts a promise from the women in his life. The fairy tale will be told one last time, and all the way to the end. Thus begins an unexpected journey into the truth of Anya's life in war-torn Leningrad, more than 5 decades ago. Alternating between past and present, Meredith and Nina will finally hear the singular, harrowing story of their mother's life, and what they learn is a secret so terrible and terrifying that it will shake the very foundation of their family and change who they believe they are. Yeah, there's a fairy tale element to this that you will understand when you read it, but yeah, this story is heartbreaking and sad and happy at the same time, and it's like, you will cry. It's probably about as much, if not more, than The Nightingale, in my opinion. I will die on this hill that this one is better than The Nightingale. Although I will be probably the first one to watch The Nightingale on TV when it finally comes out. You know, they're making a movie. So, yeah. Anyway, there's that one. Now we'll go to the more obscure books. So the first one I have is Until Leaves Fall in Paris by Sarah Sundin. I actually did get this one through a booktuber, Katie from Paperbacks and Ponytails. She suggested it, and I enjoyed it. So, yeah. Just to warn you, this is considered Christian fiction, but I don't think it's enough faith content to where people who are not Christian can't enjoy it. I mean, Katie, you can comment and let me know what you think, but truly, it's not that much faith content. Like, it's, tell me, God, am I doing the right thing type of things, but you're not, like, quoting a bunch of scripture, and it's not, like, we're talking maybe a few lines where they mention God. but it's not like a huge thing. Maybe not a few lines, but it's not a part of the story that much. Like, he's Christian, but it's not preachy, I guess. So I'm pretty sure that anyone can enjoy this. So, Until Leaves Fall in Paris by Sarah Sundin. When the Nazis marched toward Paris, American ballerina Lucy Girard buys her favorite English language bookstore to allow the Jewish owners to escape. The Germans make it difficult for her to keep Greenleaf Books afloat, and she must keep the store open if she is to continue aiding the resistance by passing secret messages between the pages of her books. Widower Paul Aubrey wants nothing more than to return to the States with his little girl, but the U.S. Army convinces him to keep his factory running and obtain military information from his German customers. As the war rages on, Paul offers his own resistance by sabotaging his product and hiding British airmen in his factory. But in order to carry out his mission, he must appear to support the occupation, which does not win him any sympathy when he meets Lucy in the bookstore. In a world turned upside down, will love or duty prevail? I love this book a lot. It's World War II, and it's resistance, and it takes place partly in a bookstore. Like, I loved Lucy a lot, and I liked Paul, and I felt really bad for him because a lot of the time he did have to pretend like that he was, well, one of the bad guys. And like, you see people like ostracizing him and his kid, and it's so sad. So yeah, I really love this book, and it's really exciting, and I think everybody should read it. So yeah. The next one I have is The German Wife by Kelly Rimmer. This one, I'm not sure if I've heard it mentioned on BookTube. Maybe. I know I have, but I can't remember who talked about it. But I read it way before it was on BookTube because I've been obsessed with Kelly Rimmer for years. I've been reading her books, contemporary and World War II historical fiction, for a while. She has other ones. I think one is called The Things We Cannot Say, and then there's The Warsaw Orphan, but this one's her newest one. Basically, it's two timelines. It follows, what's her name? Sophie, and her husband in the 30s, and he basically is part of like this rocket program, and they don't believe in like the Nazi ideals or anything like that, but he's slowly kind of forced to do things he doesn't want to do, and as they start having kids, he kind of has to because they like threaten him and stuff. And then you fast forward to like 20 years later when he's pardoned for his crimes and they get to go to Alabama. Like, they get to escape and go to Alabama where he can keep working on the rocket program morally, I guess. And both stories are really terrible, like interesting, terrible because it's like Nazi stuff. But for me, I found the story during the war fascinating, but for me, the most interesting part was post-war because of the way that they were kind of treated in Alabama. And one of the things I found most interesting, it's not a spoiler exactly, but it was an interesting line. They're kind of, like, a lot of the people in their town know that there's some, like, Germans coming from the program that used to be Nazis, and so they're given a lot of grief for it, you know. But Sophie actually tells this woman off, and she's like, okay, you're condemning me because I'm, like, a former, like, you know, that I may have helped the Nazis or whatever, but, are you any better? You guys have separate, like, segregated things, like, and I never thought about it that way, like, but it's true, like, they're, like, condemning Nazis, but they're just as bad. They're not a whole lot better. And they think that's okay, but like they're getting after them for being Nazis. So it was, the present day timeline was really fascinating to me. There was also another couple, like another woman in the present day timeline of the 50s. I wasn't that interested in her, but you hear about her time during like the Dust Bowls, I think, or the Great Depression, like during the 30s too. And kind of what screwed up her brother, so to speak. And her brother, like, is super anti-Nazi to the point that something very bad happens to Sophie's husband. I won't say what, but yeah, it's a really interesting story because it really makes you think. I hope I didn't give too much away, but yeah, like, you really need to read this. It is wild. So there's that one. Next is Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Sepetys. This is considered YA, but actually Mitzi from Mitzi Reads and Writes just reviewed this recently. So you can go check out her review, but wow. This is a part of World War II I did not really know much about. So yeah, I'll read the description for this one. Lena is just like any other 15-year-old Lithuanian girl in 1941. She paints, she draws, she gets crushes on boys. Until one night when Soviet officers barge into her home, tearing her family from the comfortable life they've known. Separated from her father, forced onto a crowded and dirty train car, Lena, her mother, and her younger brother slowly make their way north, crossing the Arctic Circle to a work camp in the coldest reaches of Siberia. Here they are forced, under Stalin's orders, to dig for beets and fight for their lives under the cruelest of conditions. Like, I did not know much about Stalin until this book, because, you know, we mostly hear about Hitler. But this was YA too, and like, everything bad that could happen to this family happened to this family, and yeah, you really feel like you're in the cold in Siberia, freezing while you're digging ditches. Like, this book is atmospheric in, like, this is YA, but I question whether it should be because so much happens in this book. But it is definitely worth the read. I need to read more of Ruta Sepetys' books. I have a few on my TBR, but so far that's the first one I've read. There's also a movie. I think it's called Ashes in the Snow. I haven't seen that yet, though. But definitely pick this one up. Now we're getting obscure, really obscure, because I've never heard anyone mention these books. So, first one I have here is Those Who Save Us by Jenna Bloom. I read this a long time ago, but I found it. For 50 years, Anna Schlemmer has refused to talk about her life in Germany during World War II. Her daughter Trudy was only 3 when she and her mother were liberated by an American soldier and went to live with him in Minnesota. Trudy's sole evidence of the past is an old photograph, a family portrait showing Anna, Trudy, and a Nazi officer. The Obsturmführer of Buchenwald. Driven by the guilt of her heritage, Trudy, now a professor of German history, begins investigating the past and finally unearths the dramatic and heartbreaking truth of her mother's life. So, yeah, like, you kind of see the life of this woman trying to protect her child and what she has to do to protect her kid. Honestly, this was, like, the first time that I read a book where, like, potentially, I mean, I'm not trying to spoil anything, but potentially speaking, the question throughout this whole book is this Nazi my father? I'm not going to tell you whether he is or not, but, like, I've never really read a book where the reality was that mommy may have had to sleep with a Nazi in order to protect her kids. And that was a harsh reality for me. I mean, I get how and why it happened, but I'm just telling you from my memories of this book, I was genuinely shocked by this. But it was definitely a great read, and yeah, I recommend everybody reads this book. Next, I have The Medallion by Kathy, I cannot pronounce his name, Gohlke, Gohlke. I found this book on Audible, just at random, and I'm going to read the description. It's going to sound cheesy, but trust me, this is not cheesy in the slightest. So, The Medallion. Seemingly overnight, the German Blitzkrieg of Warsaw in 1939 turns its streets to a war zone and shatters the life of each citizen, Polish, Jewish, or otherwise. Sophia Kunmenga, a British bride working in the city's library, awaits news of her husband, Janek, recently deployed with the Polish Air Force. Though Sophie is determined that she and the baby in her womb will stay safe, the days ahead will draw her into the plight of those around her, compelling her to help whatever the danger. Rosa and Yitzhak Donovich never imagined they would welcome their longed-for first child in this Jewish ghetto, or that they would let anything tear their family apart. But as daily atrocities intensify, Rosa soon faces a terrifying reality. To save their daughter's life, she must send her into hiding. Her only hope of finding her after the war, if any of them survive, is a medallion she cuts in half and places around her neck. See what I mean? It sounds so cheesy. Like, let me give you half a medallion. I mean, have you seen Friends where Chandler doesn't want to adopt twins when their birth mom has twins, and he's like, we'll give them half a medallion. When they grow up, they'll find each other. I mean, that's always been one of the standing jokes in Friends. But, like, this is, like, a real thing in this book where the mother has half a medallion and the little girl has half a medallion. But trust me, this is not cheesy, like, at all. Even though it sounds kinda. Like, things happen, bad things happen in this book. But it's a really good book. And I've never heard of anyone else who's read it. And I think that anyone who likes World War II historical fiction should definitely read it. Both women are really brave. I love Sophia or Sophie. And I love Rosa and Janek's relationship. Wait, I'm confusing people. Janek is Sophie's husband. Yitzhak is Rosa's husband. But yeah, Rosa and Yitzhak have a lovely, like, relationship. It is so sweet. But yeah, and I am not a sap or romantic, but yeah, I love this book a lot. Anyway, next is The Girl in the Blue Coat by Monica Hesse? Hesse. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. I also read this one a very long time ago, but I remember loving it a lot, so yeah. Amsterdam, 1943. Hanique spends her days procuring and delivering sought-after black market goods to paying customers, her nights hiding the true nature of her work from her concerned parents, and every waking moment mourning her boyfriend who was killed on the Dutch front lines when the Germans invaded. She likes to think of her illegal work as a small act of rebellion. On a routine delivery, a client asks Hanique for help. Expecting to hear that Mrs. Janssen wants meat or kerosene, Hanique is shocked by the older woman's frantic plea to find a person, a Jewish teenager Mrs. Janssen has been hiding, who has vanished without a trace from a secret room. Hannah initially wants nothing to do with such dangerous work, but is ultimately drawn into a web of mysteries and stunning revelations that lead her into the heart of the resistance, open her eyes to the horrors of the Nazi war machine, and compel her to take desperate action. So, yeah, I think this one's considered YA, but it's really interesting, like, the journey to find this person. So, yeah, like, I remember loving this book a lot when I read it years ago. I don't remember a whole lot about it, but it is definitely what you call a historical mystery, for sure. So, there's that one. Next, we have The Child on Platform 1 by Gil Thompson. I found this one on Audible as well, like just randomly. So, yeah. Prague, 1939. Young mother Eva has a secret from her past. When the Nazis invade, Eva knows the only way to keep her daughter Miriam safe is to send her away, even if it means never seeing her again. But when Eva is taken to a concentration camp, her secret is at risk of being exposed. In London, Pamela volunteers to help find places for the Jewish children arriving from Europe. Befriending one unclaimed little girl, Pamela brings her home. It is only when her young son enlists in the RAF that Pamela realizes how easily her own world could come crashing down. So, yeah, like, this is about two families. One has to send her little girl to safety in England, and Pamela is the one who ends up taking her in. And the mom who has to send her little girl away has this sort of secret that will be revealed. But trigger warning for assault of a sexual nature, I guess. It's like right at the beginning of the book, first chapter. So yeah. Anyway. But yeah, I really like this book in general. Like, the two women are really brave, and it was a great read. Next we have Saving Amelie, also by Kathy Gulk. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but I looked her up after I read The Medallion just to see what other book she had, and she had this one, and it's, yeah, I read it. I didn't like it as much as The Medallion, but it's still worth a read. Increasingly wary of her father's genetic research, Rachel Kramer has determined that this trip with him to Germany in the summer of 1939 will be her last. But a cryptic letter from her estranged friend begging Rachel for help changes everything. Married to SS officer Gerhard Schlick, Christine sees the dark tides turning and fears her husband views their daughter Amelie, deaf since birth, as a blight on his Aryan bloodline. Once courted by Schlick, Rachel knows he's as dangerous as the swastika that hangs like ebony spiders from every government building in Berlin. She fears her father's files may hold answers about Hitler's plans for others like Amelie, whom the regime deems unworthy of life. She risks searching his classified documents only to uncover shocking secrets about her own history and a family she's never known. Now hunted by the SS, Rachel turns to Jason Young, a driven, disarming American journalist and unlikely ally who connects her to the resistance, and to controversial theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Forced into hiding, Rachel's every ideal is challenged as she and Jason walk a knife's edge, risking their lives and asking others to do the same, for those they barely know but come to love. So yeah, like, this starts out one way and then goes a different direction that you didn't expect with this big revelation. But what initially caught my attention was Amelie's story. I mean, I'm blind and Amelie's deaf, like, and they're basically, like, the story is protecting Amelie, essentially, because her own father's, like, probably wanting her killed off, because, you know, she's not Aryan enough for him, or perfect enough for his new world they're trying to build. And it's pretty sobering, because, like, if I was alive in the 40s, I'd probably be dead. You know, because I am also not the perfect, you know, ideal human for their weird beliefs. Anyway, there's that one. Now we have The Orphan's Mother by Marion Comero. I recently came across this one on Audible as well. This one is interesting. 1945, the German-Polish border. With Nazis on one side and Soviet forces approaching on the other, a mother and her little boy are torn apart, and so begins an unforgettable tale of courage, heartbreak, and motherhood in wartime. If you ever get lost, Jacob, you need to stay where you are and wait, because I'll come looking for you, and I'll always find you. In the icy grip of winter, Emma is trying to escape Poland with her 2 young children and little more than the clothes on their backs. With the Russian Red Army advancing, she knows their safety relies on them crossing the border. She swears to herself that she'll do whatever it takes to keep their family together. But before they can reach the border, her little boy Jacob falls ill, his once sparkling blue eyes getting dimmer with each moment that passes. And Emma knows she has to get him to a hospital, where she hands him to a kind nurse. She feels sure they will be reunited the next day, but then the bombing starts, and when she reaches the hospital again, she finds it deserted, her darling son gone. Though her heart tells her she has to stay and find him, she faces an impossible choice. She would risk her own life for Jacob in a heartbeat, but as her daughter Sophie's cold little hand slips into her own, Emma is forced to make a heartbreaking decision. Unable to find any trace of her beloved son, she knows she must at least get her daughter to safety. But she can never forget the promise she made to her little boy, that if they were ever separated, she'd come looking for him, that she'd always find him. Whatever the danger, whatever the risk, she knows what she has to do, because there is nothing stronger than a mother's love. So, yeah, this book is unique because it kind of talks about the German side of things. Like, we don't really talk about that because a lot of times we talk about, like, Germans are the enemies and the Jews are, the ones persecuted, and they totally are. But they don't talk about, like, the women and children of the Germans who have to escape the Russians because the Russians are, like, eager to, like, hurt them. And that's where this family was trying to get away from the Russians. That's what they were trying to do. And then this little boy falls ill, and the mom has to leave him in a hospital. She can't stay with him. And what's interesting is that the person who takes him is a Jewish nurse. And so, like, it's wild. Just because, this mom, Emma, kind of has, the typical beliefs of that time that Jewish people were, you even have, like, the thoughts of the little boy when he's, like, 4 or 5 and just meeting this nurse. He's like, Mommy always said Jews weren't very smart, but this lady's brilliant, And it's just an interesting perspective to read from. And so, yeah, Jewish woman helps a German child, even though they're kind of like, even her husband was kind of like, you don't have to do this. But she did. And then, there comes a time when, well, I guess I should stop talking now. That could spoil stuff. But, it's, does she find him? And what happens if she does find him? How will that reunion turn out? So, yeah, there's that one. I think this is my second to last one. The Midwife of Auschwitz by Anna Stewart. I also found this one on Audible. Can't remember how I found it. Auschwitz, 1943. As I held the tiny baby in my arms, my fingers traced the black tattoo etched across her little thigh, and I prayed that one day the set of numbers, identical to her mother's, would have the power to reunite a family torn apart from war. Inspired by an incredible true story, this poignant novel tells of one woman's fight for love, life, and hope during a time of unimaginable darkness. Anna Kaminsky is pushed through the worn gates of Auschwitz beside her frightened young friend Esther Pasternak. As they reach the front of the line, Anna steps forward and quietly declares herself a midwife and Esther her assistant. Their arms are tattooed and they're ordered to the maternity hut. Holding an innocent newborn baby, Anna knows the fate of so many are in her hands and vows to do everything she can to save them. When 2 guards in their chilling SS uniforms march in and snatch a blonde-haired baby from its mother, it's almost too much for Anna to bear. Consoling the distraught woman, Anna realizes amidst the terrible heartache, there is a glimmer of hope. The guards are taking the healthiest babies and placing them with German families so they will survive. And there are whispers the war is nearly over. Anna and Esther begin to secretly tattoo little ones with their mother's numbers, praying one day they may be reunited. Then, early one morning, Anna notices the small bump under Esther's thin clothing. Dun, dun, dun. So, yeah, like, literally, I did not know this either. Like, all of these, this is why I just cannot get tired of these books. Because, like, all of them, like, teach you something different about the war. And I mean, for example, like this one, I did not know that, like, I mean, despite their, feelings about Jews, they still took, like, these Jewish children away from their mothers to, like, if they looked Aryan enough, to just hand them off to German families and pretend they're, like, Aryan kids. I never quite knew that. So it's interesting to, like, know that they did that. And that, you know, that they were able to survive the war and stuff. And that some of them actually got to be reunited with their families because somebody had the foresight to tattoo the same prison numbers onto the babies so they could be reunited with their families. So, yeah, anyway, so there's that one. My last book, I'm actually looking it up on Goodreads right now because I literally just remembered it existed. It's Carolina's Twins. It's by, I cannot see the author, Ronald H. Balson. So, yeah, this is another one that I read a long time ago. But, yeah. I'll read the description. Okay. I had to look it up. Lena Woodward is an elderly woman, enlists the help of both lawyer Catherine Lockhart and private investigator Liam Taggart to appraise the story of her harrowing past in Nazi-occupied Poland. At the same time, Lena's son Arthur presents her with a hefty lawsuit under the pretense of garnering her estate and independence for his own purposes. Where these stories intersect is through Lena's dubious account of her life in war-torn Poland and her sisterhood with a childhood friend named Carolina. Lena and Carolina struggled to live through the atrocity of the Holocaust and at the same time harbored a courageous yet mysterious secret of maternity that has troubled Lena throughout her adult life. In telling her story to Catherine and Liam, Lena not only exposes the realities of overcoming the horrors of the Holocaust, she also comes to terms with her own connection to her dark past. Carolina's Twins is a tale of survival, love, and resilience in more ways than one. As Lena recounts her story, Catherine herself also recognizes the unwavering importance of family as she prepares for the arrival of her own unborn child. So, yeah, basically she's trying to find out what happened to these twins. And, you know, I mean, like, the case is sort of dubious because it's, like, really old. I mean, we're talking, this lady's really old, so it's hard to find missing people who've been missing that long, but yeah, it's kind of another sort of detective story trying to figure out what happened, and I really enjoyed it. So anyway, hopefully this video isn't like an hour long, but yeah, those are some of the historical fiction World War II books that I have enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you in my next video. Bye!
Speech on. Near bottom. Stop recording video.